Greetings, one and all. Super Sundays here in the Holy Land, the holy city of Elon Moreh, Shechem, my house. Welcome back. Yes, we take this opportunity once again to thank our tremendous sponsors, Mike, 3.5 months out there in the south of Israel, doing tremendous things with his team of volunteers and also the search dogs. And on the computer, the great blog, Tomer Devora, putting out these classes every week religiously, the greatest blog. Check it out. And of course, our cameraman, our veteran cameraman, we can call him now, Elchanan Gilboa from Elon Moreh, hometown, home game. Okay, bring them home now. Part 3. Question mark and exclamation point, and both of them are important. The question mark and the exclamation point. Once again, before we start, all our thoughts, all our love to all of the hostages, all their families, all the soldiers, all the volunteers, all the wives of soldiers in the army, to all the Jewish people, a big hug from us, all of us. Okay, now, this is the final class, and we're gonna really, you gotta listen to this class because it's also summarizing. It's the bottom line. Is it a question mark to free the hostages, bring them home now? Or is it an exclamation point? Yes, we can bring them home. So we're gonna get it. We're gonna hit it finally tonight. Okay. Please listen to the second part. It has the Jewish law given in a summarizing form. We're going to continue that summary right now. Our last point in the last class, and we'll take off from there, that will be our diving board. Our last question was, if there's a danger to the hostage's life, does that change the enactment not to exaggerate when giving ransom, trying to free hostages? We said, according to most opinion of the early sages, the Rishonim, it does not change anything. You are not allowed to exaggerate, even if there's a danger that the captive might be killed. According to a minority opinion, the enactment does not include such a situation. It was talking about, the decree was talking about a regular situation where there's not a danger of someone's life. They'll be taken as slaves, or, probably taken as slaves, but that was about it. They're not going to be killed. So there is that dispute. However, we saw the list of the amount compared to the minority, so it's a little bit, it wasn't balanced. Many more Rishonim say that you're not allowed to exaggerate, even if there's a danger to one's life. Okay, with that said, we said, once you have a minority opinion, so in certain grave situations, sometimes you could rely on such an opinion. That's what happens. Let's say in anything that we do during the day in Jewish law, they give us many times 1, 2, 3 options. The best one is number 1. The second best is number 2. But sometimes your back is against the wall, and you should know that there are sources that say it's okay. Not many, but sometimes you could rely if your back is against the wall. So that's important, because we will see that there are opinions that come over the ages, that in such a situation where there is a danger, like there is today in Gaza, there is a minority opinion that you are allowed to free them. And it's not based on error. It's not based on, there is a base behind that. It's not the majority opinion, but there is a base to that. Okay, so that was our last point. Now, today, here is a new twist. When the Talmud talks about when the Talmud talks, or when the Torah talks, or the Tanakh talks about hostages, we're not accustomed to an exchange, which means, okay, you give me your captives, and we'll give you terrorists in return, murderers in return. That did not exist. It was, you pay money. In order to free the captives, you had to pay a sum of money, and that's all she wrote. So now, here's an interesting question. This decree of the Talmud that you're not allowed to exaggerate, maybe that was talking only about a regular old-time religion situation where there was only a question of money, of ransom money. But maybe when we're talking about exchanging captives for terrorists, maybe that is not included in the decree. Okay, now so the question is, let's say the captives are in a danger. Their lives are in danger. And the release of prisoners, of terrorists, pose a possible threat to the community. Once you release murderers and prisoners, etc., it poses a possible threat. So on one hand, you have something for sure. You have what would seem certain, that the captive's life is in danger, and a question mark of, if I release prisoners, terrorists, perhaps this is a question mark danger to the community. Okay. So what do? What's the Jewish opinion when you have a certain fact of danger, captive in this situation, and a question mark? Releasing terrorists, will this be a serious threat to the community, to the state? Okay, so we have two opinions here. According to Hagot Maimoniot, based on a Jerusalem Talmud learning, he writes to us that in a situation where there is a questionable danger, a certain danger takes precedence, which means it is possible to put individuals into a possible danger in order to save a captive whose life is for certain in danger. So let's bring the scenario here alive. Let's say there's somebody in an island was kidnapped. Are we allowed to send 3 soldiers there in order to try to save them? So if we're certain that one hostage on this island, this small island, his life is in danger, but now if I'm sending 3 soldiers there, I'm also possibly endangering them. It could be that they'll make it out. There's a possibility of a danger. According to Hagot Maimoniot, it is obligatory to send a soldier or soldiers who have a questionable danger of life because of the fact that the captive is in a danger to his life. So therefore, when there's a question mark and a certainty, we say that you have to save that hostage from certain death. Now, on the other opposite side of this dispute is the Sma, Sefer Mirat Einayim. He brings down his opinion in the Code of Jewish Law, Choshen Mishpat 426, the first law. The Hagot Maimoniot, he is brought down in the Maimonides in the Laws of Murderers, the first chapter, the 14th law. According to the Sma, he writes that a person is not allowed to bring himself to a possible danger, even though we understand that there is a person whose life is for certain in danger. Which means if I see somebody swimming and they're about to drown, that's 100%. And I'm worried that there's a possibility that I will not be able to make it that far, and I might drown as well. There is no obligation. In fact, according to many, it is forbidden to put yourself in such a predicament of a possible danger to your life. So, according to the Sma, one is not allowed to put themselves in a possible danger in order to save somebody who is in 100% in a certain danger. The majority of opinion in the Jewish law go according to the Sma, that you're not allowed to possibly endanger people, even though we understand that there is somebody out there who is in a certain danger. This is, for example, the Sma writes, if you notice, he says, the great Jewish law commentators like the Rosh, the Rif, the Rambam, they do not, the Code of Jewish Law, they do not bring down this Hagot Maimoniot that obligates a person to put themselves, him or herself, in a possible danger. That takes precedence because it's only a questionable danger, because we have a certain danger here. So you're obligated to. No, this is not brought down by the names that I just mentioned, the tremendous Jewish law commentators. In the Pitrei Tshuva, he agrees that the reason why these great Jewish law commentators did not bring it down as halacha, because there are many tractates in the Talmud, the Babylonian Talmud, that go against this Jerusalem Talmud that Hagot Maimoniot was relying on. So that's why they did not bring it down, because we have sources that show us, that prove to us not to put yourself in a possible danger, even though you're trying to help someone who is in a certain danger to their lives. Amazing. The Minchat Chinuch in Commandment 237, he agrees also with this opinion of the Sma. So we have all of these opinions that agree that you're not allowed to put yourself or put a community in a possible danger. In our case, you wouldn't be able to release hostages, because even though their lives are for certain in danger, you cannot possibly endanger a community, a state, by releasing terrorists and murderers. Even though it's a question mark. Maybe they'll do repentance. Yeah. Yuck. Yeah, right? Okay. But he adds something very interesting. Listen to what he adds. The Minchat Chinuch, he says, I agree that you do not have to put yourself in a position of a question mark danger in order to save someone who's in certain danger. But however, we do have a Jerusalem Talmud that does speak about a person should put themselves in a possible danger in order to try to save someone who's in certain danger. We have to approach this Jerusalem Talmud with the proper respect and fear. Okay, so once again, we see another window. Once again, listen, the majority opinion is no deals here with the terrorists. No deals, right. But still, we do see a minority of opinion which gives a window of relying on this minority opinion, perhaps in certain circumstances. Okay. Therefore, because of these two windows that we mentioned, window number one, does this decree in the Talmud, not to exaggerate, to release hostages, does that include hostages that are in danger, their lives are in danger? We said according to most, it includes. It doesn't matter if your life's in danger or not. We are not allowed to exaggerate. But there is a minority of opinion that if a life is in danger, you would be able to exaggerate in ransom or perhaps freeing murderers and terrorists. Second window is that we ask the question, are we allowed to put a community in a possible danger, we're not sure, in order to save people, hostages that are in certain danger? According to most opinion, you're not allowed to. However, there still is a minority opinion that you are allowed to. These two windows allow the following opinion to be said. There are a minority of Jewish law experts that their conclusion is that it is not an obligation. You do not have to put yourself in a possible danger in order to save someone who's in certain danger. However, it is permitted. Oh, it is permitted. Next, some of the Jewish law commentators wrote that one should not be, once again, they're not talking necessarily about hostage situations. They're talking about certain times in life where you see somebody in certain danger. Are you or should you put yourself in a possible danger? Once again, it just gives us a window to include hostages. But they weren't talking, of course, about hostages. They were talking about, in general, if you see somebody in danger, like we said, the example, if you're walking by a swimming pool and you see somebody drowning and they're for certain going to die because they don't know how to swim, and you know how to swim a little bit, you also might drown. So there is an opinion that you should take the chance, even though there's a chance that you also might die. But in order to try to save somebody who's in certain danger, you should not be so strict to say, "Oh, I'm not going to do it." Those include the Mishnah Brura, the Chavetz Chaim, in the Laws of Orach Chaim, 329. Law 19, the Aruch HaShulchan in Choshen Mishpat in 626, Law 4, and the Radbaz in his third volume, the answer number 627. Okay. Various modern day commentators, Jewish law commentators, took this concept to include freeing hostages. As I just mentioned, the sources that I mentioned, the Mishnah Brura, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Radbaz, they weren't talking about hostages. They were talking about things that could come up in life. You see a fire, and you jumping into the building could be a possible danger to your life, but somebody inside, he's definitely going to die. Do you take that risk or not? So they're saying, when it comes to interpreting the law, am I in a possible danger? Don't be so strict about it. Be more lenient and say, okay, maybe give it a shot. Okay, but once again, because this window was opened, now it left open the opportunity for modern day law interpreters to come and say this does include freeing hostages. So therefore, when it comes a question to freeing hostages whose lives are in certain danger, then we must go and free them, even though by we releasing hostages, we realize that there is a chance that they will go back to their previous life and they will cause danger to the Jewish people, because it's only a question mark. Once again, we saw in the 46 years ago in Entebbe in 1976, 48 years ago, that's a long time ago, there were rabbis, the majority of rabbis that Rabbi Ovadia Yosef contacted, they were willing, they said it is permissible halachically to release 40 terrorists that they were demanding, because of the fact that the hostages are in certain danger, their lives are in certain danger, and by releasing these prisoners, these murderers, that is a question mark. It's not for certain. So therefore, when you have a scale, certain and a question mark, we go with saving the hostages who are in certain danger. So that was the line that they took. Once again, they did not have a lot of experience. We're talking about a long time ago, and we're going to bring it up till today, and all our experience today, we'll see the situation is totally changed. Okay, so we saw there's a minority of opinion out there that just as an individual can possibly endanger themselves to save someone that is in certain danger, a state can also endanger its inhabitants, its residents, in a questionable danger, in order to save other citizens that are in certain life danger. So it doesn't necessarily there's no difference between if we're talking about a small group of people that our lives are in danger, and we're talking about a small group of people that are in possible danger if they go to save them. It also could be endangering a state, a possible danger of a state, possible. Okay, this is in parentheses. There are certain modern day commentators, Jewish law commentators, that added an exception to this rule of the Mishnah. If you remember the past class, we spoke about a person himself is allowed to exaggerate in freeing, redeeming himself. We are allowed for a Torah scholar to exaggerate in redeeming them, and a person's wife, you are allowed to exaggerate. Add one more to the list. They say that soldiers have a special status. This is brought down by Rabbi Yaakov Ariel, Rabbi Shaul Israeli, and Rabbi Chaim David Levi, the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv. Back in the day, they bring down different proofs that soldiers are also included in the exception to the rule. Now, with that said, they all add that you always have to check the security situation. Is it a question mark danger to the population if we release terrorists in exchange for hostages? or is it a real danger? That's what has to, they all add that. So they're talking about the possibilities of releasing hostages, and they add soldiers. They would also be an exception to the rule. And because the hostages' lives are in danger, so they would come under that jurisdiction also. But always they add that it all depends on the danger of releasing the hostages. If it's a real danger, then, not in releasing the terrorists, if it's a real danger, then they would say you're not allowed to free the hostages, even though we understand their lives are in danger, because you can't take a group of a small amount of hostages and then endanger 7 million people if it's a real danger. Okay, so keep that in mind. Now, my humble opinion, the clincher is the story behind Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner. We mentioned this before. In 1970, the Arabs hijacked a plane. There was a famous rabbi, one of the great American rabbis, Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner, was on there with his family, and there were students that were willing to pay. They were willing to pay the price, the ransom, and all of a sudden, the leading figure, one of the leading figure in America, besides for Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, was Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky Zatzal, the leader of Agudat Yisrael. He came out and said, no, I'm not interested. If it's true, the halacha, the Jewish law says, for a Torah scholar, you are allowed to exaggerate, but that is talking about regular daily life circumstances. When you're in a place that's not involved in a war, this is a great clincher. I look at the simple clincher. This is the grand slam on this subject of bring them home now, free the hostages now. Here's the grand slam. So Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky said, don't bring money. I understand you raised the money, very nice, keep it. Why? Because the laws of war are different. And Israel is considered to be a country in the middle of a war. And it doesn't matter that right now they're not technically in a war. But he writes from 1948, so true, so true. This is such a exact clarification of the status of Israel. Israel from day number one until now is in a state of war. And when the Talmud was talking about whether it is permissible to exaggerate or to free hostages, that was talking about daily type of life situation. It wasn't talking about a war situation. A war situation has totally different principles. And therefore in a war, he writes, I quote, the money strengthens the enemy and its war efforts against the Jewish people. A war is to be fought and not surrender. Amazing. When you're in a war, you cannot strengthen the enemy. People, irresponsible people calling to stop the war. Irresponsible. This encourages them. And therefore, he wrote straight out, in a wartime situation, you cannot capitulate to the terrorists, to the kidnappers, because you are in the middle of a war. And this will encourage them. This will give them, so to speak, electricity to continue, gasoline to continue their war against us. I said this class is bringing them home now, question mark or exclamation point. So now we'll see why it's question mark or an exclamation point. Today, folks, we finished the Jewish law aspect. Go over it again. But today there is no question. There is no question. I spoke recently to a rabbi. He's a judge in a Jerusalem court, in a Jewish religious court. And I spoke to him, and he had written a long 35-page essay on the question of freeing hostages. I called him up and I said, listen, you know, after what we've seen over the last 30 years, 40 years, okay, isn't it clear today that there's nothing to talk about? He says, I agree with you 100%. Today there is no more debate. There is no longer any windows open. Listen closely. In the year 1985, in the Jabril deal, Israel released 1,150 terrorists for 3 soldiers. The deal created the catalyst of the first intifada. This was said, not by me, this was said by the head, back then, by the head of the secret service, the Shin Bet of Israel. He said that this is what brought upon us. The release of these prisoners brought us upon. This was the leadership of the first intifada, which killed 84 Jews. We released 3 soldiers, and we got in return 84 dead Jews killed. Get that, let that sink in. Number 2, the Gilad Shalit release. He was released one soldier, one Jew, for 1,027 prisoners in 2011. This created the new leadership of the Hamas, including, may his name be released, Sinwar. And in one day, they killed 1,400 Jews on the last day of Sukkot, on Simchat Torah. 1,400 Jews, injured 3,500 Jews. So one person was released. One person was released. And in return, 1,400 Jews were murdered. That is against Torah law, against any common sense to go and do that. Number 3, statistics show that a large percentage, 70% of released terrorists return to violent activities, all types of violent activities against Jews, including murder of Jews. Number 4, why in the world should soldiers or civilians endanger themselves by trying to capture terrorists if they know that it's only a matter of time before those terrorists are going to be released? Why should I risk my life to go and capture this terrorist who's in the middle of some kind of terrorist action activity? Why should I endanger myself in order to capture him, in order to arrest him, when he will be released? And I'm taking a risk of my life. Maybe if I try to arrest him or to capture him, I'm going to get killed. Why should I take a risk of my life in order to have him arrested when he's going to be released anyways? I'm not going to do it. Number 5, by releasing terrorists, this gives encouragement. This encourages the masses to do the same thing. You could also be a terrorist, you could also be a murderer, and you too will be released, after a short time in prison, in Israeli prisons, enjoying yourself. So this is forbidden to do. This is forbidden, clearly forbidden to do. Also, this makes a mockery of the judicial system. Judicial system, they put people in prison for life, and then you just go and you release them. It makes a mockery of the judicial system. Number 6. After what we saw on the Simchat Torah massacre, the October 7th massacre, we saw all the security agencies in Israel and the military agencies in Israel who told us everything was okay on October 6th. Who in the world trusts them if they would ever say that, listen, we could release terrorists and there is no danger to the population of Israel? Who in the world gives what they say? Who trusts them? They created a situation. 1,400 Jews were murdered, 3,500 injured. They who claimed the Hamas was down and out. Yes, down and out. Number 7. There is no question today left on this issue. It is forbidden to, in this type of fashion, to release terrorists for exchange of hostages. Forbidden, 1,000,000%. The movement to free the hostages is by no means a pure, innocent, grassroots movement. While there are people that are pure and innocent within the movement, that's for certain. However, unfortunately, there are many ulterior motives. People that are, pardon or pun intended, are hitching on to this movement to free the hostages. There are political agendas. There are PR campaigns to sway public opinion. There are emotional campaigns that are taking place, working on people's emotions and hearts, trying to manipulate the masses. Now, when it comes to security versus PR groups that their whole purpose is trying to sell their product, public relations, then security takes precedence. Very, very clear. So we're not talking about some pure innocent movement here. Okay, there are a lot of ulterior motives here that are going on. Number 8, there is a clear Torah prohibition in Numbers 35:31. You shall not accept ransom for the life of a murderer. You are not allowed to take any amount of, this is a biblical prohibition here. This is a Torah prohibition here. You're not allowed to take any ransom, any swap, any terrorist that is a murderer. You are no way allowed to swap him for somebody else. That is a Torah prohibition. Next. Okay. That was the question mark, and now the exclamation point. Is there a way? Is there a way to free the hostages? 100%. Should they be freed? Of course. Our heart goes out to them. We just said that you cannot swap terrorists for captives. Okay? But there is a way. There is a way. In the time of the Second Temple, destruction of the Second Temple, there was a Jew. His name was Shimon Bar Giora. His wife was taken hostage. And the enemies were certain that this would lead Shimon Bar Giora and his group of men that were revolting against the Romans. They were certain that he would put his arms down and he would surrender. No way, Ray. You want to free the hostages? Exclamation point. Yes, we can free the hostages. And you know what he did? He started going around. He started going around civilian targets, and he would just wreak havoc on the civilian population. Now, they must have not been the innocent civilians of Gaza, but what can you do? It got so bad for the civilian population, they forced the kidnappers of Shimon's wife to let him go, to let her go. That's how you work. Hit the civilian population. They ain't innocent. That's number one. Number two, at the start, there should have been a siege on Gaza. No food, no medicine, no gasoline, till the hostages are released. We are for bringing them home now, but not by releasing terrorists and not by stopping wars. Let them come on their begging on their knees, coming, please stop. No humanitarian. Number three, no humanitarian aid allowed. Instead of the hostages, the family of the hostages demonstrating in front of political offices, this is wrong. They should be at the checkpoints that allow humanitarian aid to the Hamas. That's where it goes to. That's where it goes to. And that is keeping the war going. That is fueling the war. That's where they should be holding their demonstrations, the family of the hostages. Another way, exclamation point, yes, free the hostages now, literally now. If you do not release the hostages every hour, one of the terrorists in prison, one of the murderous Arab terrorists, we will take them out and shoot them. See how fast they return the hostages. Next, death penalty to all terrorists. Death penalty. Don't give them another chance for this hostage kidnapping. Enough of that. They must be put to death. Professor of International Law Eugene Kantorovich was recently interviewed about the hostage situation. He said the following. He said, we should fight a war as if there are no hostages and undertake the freedom of the hostages as if there's no war. The interviewer who heard this, okay, he's a great guy, but this point is totally wacko. He understood the oxymoron of the point that there's no way to do that. You can't you can't make a war as if there's no hostages, and the hostages as if there's no war. So the interviewer caught this and he quickly went on to the next subject. He quickly switched the subject. An amazing article by David Weinberg. David Weinberg is the founder of the Mizgav Institute for National Security, last 27 years. In a recent Jerusalem Post article regarding the hostages, he had the following to say. What is true in everyday life is true in wartime too. You must focus to succeed. Trying to do too many things simultaneously, and you're set for a setback, disappointment, or failure. That is exactly what happened to Israel over the past 3 weeks. Ever since it agreed to a series of pauses in the war against Hamas, and then reignite the ground campaign against Hamas under increased U.S. scrutiny, it has lost focus. It is seeking to concurrently accomplish diverse goals and balance competing interests, and is trying to cover too many bases. Israel risks failure across the board. Therefore, it's time for Israel's wartime leaders to concentrate once again their efforts on the most critical goal of this war, That is the eradication of Hamas' threat to Israel and consequent restoration of Israel's deterrent posture versus all of the Middle East. We are talking about an existential threat here that we're underneath. The world is looking to see how we are going to react here. If we capitulate, we're finished. Finito. Everything else is secondary. Nothing should distract Israel's leaders from the focus. Nothing should dissuade them from achieving the fullest possible victory over Hamas. So true in life. You start worrying about too many things, you lose on all fronts. Folks, we pray, hopefully by the time that you receive this class, the prisoners, who our hearts go out to the captives, the hostages, they will be already freed. Hashem, Israel will go in and destroy the enemy, and through destroying of the enemy, however they decide to do it, they will be released. But it is forbidden to put a country of 7 million people in danger by stopping a war with the Hamas, and by endangering, by freeing terrorists back into the country of Israel. This is forbidden by Jewish law. It is forbidden by anyone with logically, it is something that is impossible, something that is dangerous to the future of the Jewish people. God save us. So until next time, have a great week.